Hey everybody, Brian from Rebellion Ranch with you again. Gonna do a product review today. Something I get a lot of questions about. You can see all this Premier electric netting behind me. Sometimes we have up to 22 sections of it hooked up. And everybody always asks, well, how do you power that? So today we're gonna do a product review on the Speedrite 6000i Energizer that we use in combination with the solar panel that we use to power it from Premier. This Energizer you can also power in a fixed location in a building. Out here on Lackman at this 80 acres, we don't have any power, so it's all solar panel, but just know that it can work either way. So without further ado, let's get after it. So before we get to the actual Energizer, let's start with our power source. We've got a 70-watt solar panel out here that would quite readily in the summertime, if left to its own devices, cook the fencing battery. So on the back of this, we have a regulator, which I'll show you now. This regulator allows us to control the amount of power that goes into our fencing battery, which is actually quite a small battery, as I'll show you right here. We don't have a huge deep cycle battery on this. We will when this one dies out, but just hasn't been necessary thus far. Would be good for a lot of cloudy, rainy days like the ones we have coming up. So far we have shown you the solar panel, which provides the energy, the regulator that controls the energy, the battery that stores and delivers the energy. Now let's move on to the actual Energizer. Speedrite makes a number of Energizers. I really love this one and the models above it. I believe there's 23 joules and a few other models above that. As you can see on this one, you've got a display with your voltage, which is really nice, especially if this is in a farm building, so you can see that readily. You've got a couple of hookups where you can set this up to actually determine your ground and how effective that is. You've got the yellow hookup. If I had the positive power to that would deliver half power, which can be useful for some circumstances. And then your green is just your ground here. There are a number of settings right here, which you can dig through the manual. I'll basically give you the gist is you've got a battery checkup. You got the fast pace, slow pace, half power, or full power. I believe those are all correct. And as you can see, the logo right over here, we've got the remote on this Energizer. That 00 in the top corner, I believe that's the measurement of your ground, and I would have to refer to the manual. I've never set it up with that, but that'll let you know how effective your ground is. I think, if I'm not mistaken, if that number's getting high and you actually had this black connector hooked up, you would know you have a problem with your ground field. So this is the Energizer. It actually delivers the power out to the fence. As you can see, right here we have one of the jumper connectors right onto the metal tabs that tie the fence sections together, and it's also where we deliver the power. So from here we'll move on to the ground and how we have that set up. All right, so here's our ground rods. These are 30-inch ground rods with a T-handle on them. Typically, I use a 2-pound sledgehammer to drive them in. These aren't driven in that far. Now, I know everybody tells you on a properly installed electric fence, and I'm not going to argue with that you want 6 foot of ground rod. You want it spaced out about 6 foot each ground rod for every joule. We obviously don't have that, and I can tell you from personal experience, at least right now with the soil conditions, that the fencer works just fine. You get that tingle of electricity through your fingertips, and then it feels like somebody is basically ringing out your eardrum from inside your head. The remote that comes with the Speedrite 6000i is my favorite component of this system. Once you have a remote on an Energizer, you'll never want to go back. And I'll show you in a little while the little temporary Energizer we use that doesn't have a remote. But the biggest advantage is, let's say you're over there and one of those goats does their goat thing and gets their head stuck in the Energizer. Well, you've got a couple of choices when you don't have a remote. You can go ahead and take the electricity, get the shock, and try and get the goat out. Or you can run all the way back over here and try to turn it off, then run all the way back over there and hope the goat hasn't managed to strangle itself or die from shock. So, also when you're walking the perimeter and you've got branches touching or anything like that, it's just amazing to have this remote with you. So from here, let's just go and show you how the remote works and why I love it so much. All right, the remote's got a couple of different functions. This line button right here powers on the remote, and here's our voltage tester with this end piece right here. As you can see, just like the Energizer said, 7,600 volts. It's been my experience with the netting fence that the ground fault indicator that sometimes shows up on here, and it probably will in a minute when I show you the other function, isn't incredibly accurate. See that arrow right there? That's the ground fault indicator. On a normal high tensile electric fence, that would guide you towards where a branch or something is drawing juice out of your fence. On the netting, not incredibly accurate. But the voltage check is really good because you can go from section to section and check your voltage, and you start seeing a drop and you figure out where you're at. Okay, so the other use that this fencer or this remote has is to turn the fence on and off, obviously. So you touch it to that connector right there, and you'll get less voltage on that, but you can actually turn the Energizer off. Now here is a very crucial piece of information. It says it's off, right? All right, check, double check. I have had, especially when you're off in the distance, the Energizer come back on, and you grab a hold of that with all the confidence in the world, and yeah, that's an experience. So just double check at all times, even if you got to turn it off, turn it back on. Just give yourself that peace of mind. Never assume that you turned it on or you turned it off. Always check, because you do this enough times, at least with me and the way my crazy brain works, I forget. So I just always check. All right, so if we want to turn the fence back on, we just put it right back on that tab again. We hit on. Okay, so this is a really fast response. I am only like 5 foot away from the Energizer right now. So, you know, it really doesn't have a lot to do with it, but sometimes if you have some broken sections of fence or anything like that, it can take a couple of attempts to get the fence on or off. So you just have to work with it. In my experience though, just an invaluable piece of equipment. Wouldn't do an Energizer without a remote, because on this 80 acres, eventually we're gonna put timeless fence up around it, have high tensile on there, probably about 6 strands. And I'm gonna tell you, if I walk 2,000 feet away from the Energizer and find a branch down, I don't want to walk 2,000 feet back and 2,000 feet back, you know, turning on and off the Energizer just to get a stupid branch off the fence. So it's worth the extra $200, worth it all day long. I'll show you now where it stays with me when I'm out here on the ranch. So if you've been following me on Instagram or Facebook or any YouTube, any of that stuff for any period of time, you see these coveralls, my trusty Carhartts. They're always on me. We'll do a product review on those one day too. But just want to show you the Energizer, always, always, always right here, right in the pocket, always with me. If my wife is out here with the kids, the fence is off, but we're always communicating. But the remote always stays with me. Let's just put it that way. I get that from my Uncle Guy Gansright that used to work on huge power lines to naval vessels. The keys to the junction box always stayed with him. So just a little tip from me to you, just keep it with you. Keep it with the one you trust. While I was out in the field doing the product review, I forgot to mention one of the best features of the Speedrite 6000i, and that's the fact that when there's a load on the fence for a given amount of time, I'll have to look in the manual to tell you exactly what that is. But say an animal gets stuck in the fence, it will shut itself down automatically, and then after another given period of time, it will turn back on. This can actually be a lifesaver. The little Energizer that you'll see at the end of this video actually killed a large deer buck that got stuck in the fence because it didn't have this feature. Also, you know, obviously you'd never want your children around the electric fence, but it's just a great feature to have, a safety feature. So one of the key features of this Energizer, and that I would look for in any Energizer, is that automatic shut off. Just absolutely an essential safety feature. All right, so I'm shooting this after the fact because I just realized that I mentioned this earlier in a video. This is our small all-in-one Energizer and solar panel unit that we got from Premier. The idea was when we bought it that we would use it for the boys section because there wouldn't be as much fence. I'm not sure if that's going to pan out, but what it has been useful for is when I'm moving the big Energizer, I can hook this thing up and at least get some power in the fence. It does not have enough juice, obviously, when we have a whole bunch of sections on here, but if there's 5 or 6 sections or just a couple, you know, it does just fine. It gets us up in that 3,000 and 4,000 range, and that's enough to just give you a little security while you're moving the big Energizer. So I'll go ahead and show you how this one works, even though this isn't a product review on this one. We got it at Premier, and it is a good idea if you're doing the solar panel thing like we are, to have one to basically leapfrog from section to section, because you'll have to move your Energizer setup all the time. So on this setup, we've got one ground rod. You see the black cable hooked up to that, and our orange cable obviously would go on the fence to make that hot. And you just have a button here for on and off. Woo! Do you hear that pop? That is what we use, like I said, when we're leapfrogging from on the Energizer setup. As soon as I hook it up, though, I totally miss the remote on the other thing, because without fail, I need to turn it on, turn it off, and it leads to a lot more walking. So it's a valuable piece of our setup that we have here, but without a doubt, if the budget wasn't a constraint, I would have another Speedrite with another remote. And, maybe when we set up all of our perimeter fence, we'll go with a bigger Speedrite, and the other one will be our mobile one, and we'll be doing just that. But hopefully this was helpful as part of this product review, even though it's a slightly different product. So to wrap everything up today, I just want to give you a couple pointers. Obviously I highly recommend this Speedrite 6000i Energizer. Having had 2 Energizers from Speedrite right now, I've had absolutely no problems with them, so why would I take a chance on another? Like I said, there's plenty of other brands to choose from. Just beware of what you're getting. Don't go to the farm supply stores and buy the little off-the-shelf fencers that they have at most of them. They're weak. They'll tell you that they power so many miles of fence. Nobody cares about how many miles of fence, because it's just not accurate. What you need is how many joules is your Energizer. That's going to give you your best measurement of what you're buying, and dollar for dollar, measure it against the joules, and you'll feel every joule. I can tell you, I know the difference between a 3 joule and a 6 joule Energizer just by the well, we'll call it the taste of the electricity. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, though, is you get what you pay for. Don't try to go cheap. Too many people complain about electric fence doesn't work. Well, yeah, if you're not installing the ground field right, you're not powering it right, you're going to have problems. And most of all, you've got to maintain electric fence. This 2-acre paddock that's behind me right now, I've got probably, I'd say there's 14 sections of 150-foot netting on it, and it's running through trees. So what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to do a perimeter check, make sure there's no branches and stuff touching it, because goats are jumping on stuff and bringing it down. The wind was blowing 20-something miles an hour yesterday. So, you've just got to do the maintenance on these things to make them work. And, it's like anything else. If you didn't put oil in your truck, you can't expect that to work. I hope this review has been helpful to you. Hope you guys really take a hard look at the Energizer. They're not a sponsor of mine yet. You could be. But I would just highly recommend it to you guys. And I hope I don't say that lightly. I would not put my name out with a product that I don't believe in, but these things are pretty rock solid. So God bless you all, and we'll see you again in another video. Please subscribe, and we'll see you soon.